Hello and welcome to Transfermarkt TV. I'm Manuel, he's Stefan Bienkowski, and of course today's big topic is Chelsea and Todd Boehly and spending and money and transfers. And we're talking about Chelsea because Todd Boehly and Chelsea have done a lot of that, a lot of spending. And Stefan, if you saw the latest figure, this is after the Caicedo deal has been completed, that takes their transfer spending this season to around 900 million euros. Which is, of course, more than La Liga has spent. That is just an insane amount of money. How are they doing this? How are they in compliance with financial fair play? How do they balance their books? Do they even know what they're doing? Help us with this, please.
Yeah, so let's first off by talking about how much money they have spent. Obviously, Todd Boehly and his associates came in and took over from Roman Abramovich last summer, and they've been spending money like it's been going out of fashion ever since then. To date, and as you said, following the Caicedo deal, they've spent 935 million euros on players, and that's since last summer, which, as you mentioned, is more than La Liga. I think there's only maybe 5 European leagues off the top of my head, maybe 4 that have spent more, which is just a truly astronomical amount of money. If you want to just kind of break that down in terms of clubs, it's more than twice the next best club, which is Manchester United, who spent 435 million since then, and then Arsenal spent 427. Tottenham then come in fourth place with 371. So it's by numerous degrees more than any other club. And you could definitely argue that maybe they had to do that because of the failures of the squad. But the fact that Caicedo breaks a transfer record, which Chelsea broke themselves at the start of the year, goes to show not only the sheer quantity of players they're signing, but also the sheer amount of money they're spending on individual stars. And it's largely unprecedented, to be perfectly honest with you. They've already broken the record for the most amount of money spent in a single transfer window. It's really quite fascinating, and especially when you kind of discuss how or why they can afford to do that.
Yeah, so how and why can they do it? Obviously, they were lucky that Saudi opened their purse strings and bought a bunch of players from them. So that is one mechanism. I think another mechanism has been contract lengths. Caicedo has signed an A+1 deal. My understanding is that UEFA and FIFA are trying to sort of curb the contract lengths, but for now, these mechanisms are still in place. Stefan, those are 2 things from my understanding that Todd Boehly and Chelsea have been doing. What are some of the other things?
Yeah, there's a whole array of things that obviously Chelsea are doing on the accountancy books to kind of mitigate the upfront cost of these things. But when it comes to Transfermarkt, when it comes to transfer fees, which is what we focus on, you can even through that see how they are kind of compensating for this huge amount of money that they're spending. Because even though they are signing a lot of players, they're also selling a lot of players as well. So I mentioned that 935 million euros that they spent on new players, but in that same period, which goes back to last summer, they've also kind of made 323 million pounds from player sales. And you also have to kind of bear in mind the situation Chelsea were in when Boehly and his associates bought the club. 5 years, or the 5 years prior to that, so that's kind of how UEFA kind of run their financial fair play. They kind of do it in 5-year sections. And in the 5 years leading up to Todd Boehly's takeover, the club's net spend, so that's how much they spent on transfer fees minus how much they made from transfer fees, was 238 million euros, which was 11th among all clubs in Europe. So by no means the kind of spending spree that we're seeing right now. And I think that's probably really important to kind of bear in mind. Over the course of that period, it's made about 446 million euros in player sales. So, in terms of, UEFA's kind of 5-year timescale, they're not looking at Chelsea over the last 12 months and thinking that's in trouble. They're looking at over the last 5 years and thinking, they have sold a lot of players. Even over the course of the kind of last summer, they've probably, if I'm not mistaken, they've actually probably, I just had it there, only Ajax and Brighton have made more money from player sales than Chelsea since Todd Boehly took over. So, yes, they're spending a lot of money, but they're also making a lot of money as well. And it's also worth bearing in mind that, you only have to go through that Chelsea squad, read the newspapers, check out the gossip columns, and it's probably not beyond the realms of reason to imagine them probably making another 150 million euros in sales before this month kind of comes to an end. So It's a huge amount of money they're spending. It's a huge turnover of players. I don't really envy Maurizio Pochettino in terms of trying to build a settled squad capable of challenging for the Premier League and the Champions League. But in terms of finances and in terms of transfer fees, yes, there's some big scary numbers there. But if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd probably keep an eye on the money they're making from player sales as well. Because while Chelsea are also spending more money than anyone else, they're also making more money than just about anyone as well when it comes to sales.
Yeah, the transfer deficit by the time of recording, which is August 15th, is only 64 million euros in this summer transfer window. So not over the full year, but over this entire transfer summer. And I guess that number makes it look a lot better because if you sell a player, you get that money right away on your books. But if you buy a player, you can write that fee off over the contract length, which is of course still debatable with whether Chelsea will get away with these 8 or 10-year deals. But I guess, Stefan, that is a really, really strong point that they have been able to clear a lot of the squad out to clubs, a lot of Saudi clubs, but also around Europe. Kepa, for example, just went to Real Madrid. So the feeling is kind of that Todd Boehly probably has another ace up his sleeve.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to kind of wait and see. I guess the proof of the pudding will be in whether these new players can actually function as a team, which is something that Chelsea and under Todd Boehly haven't really managed just yet. You can argue till the cows come home as to the accountancy practices, as to how much money they're making, how much money they're spending. But at the end of the day, fans only really care if they're winning games. And that's kind of what Pochettino's going to have to sort out. But they're probably going to continue making more signings. They're obviously heavily linked with Romeo Lavia, the Southampton midfielder. He could end up joining the club before this video even gets to air. Such is the matter of Chelsea's kind of transfer activity this summer. But on the whole, as you said, the net spend's not quite as bad as people would suggest. And although that's not the be-all and end-all of finances and obviously the club's profit or loss at the end of the year, it does kind of suggest that they are trying to kind of balance the books in that regard with players that they sign by compensating them with the players that they sell.
It is a hugely fascinating topic, and I think that's one that's going to rumble on to the end of this transfer window, then continue into January and probably next summer as well, because they are in a huge reconstruct. And one big benefit, of course, is, well, I guess it's a benefit, is that they're not in the Champions League, which means, or Europa League or Conference League, which means, of course, that UEFA will not look quite as closely at their books for the time being. But of course, you can follow all of Todd Boehly's and Chelsea's activities on transfermarkt.com.co.uk.us. We have all the latest deals, all the statistics, how much they've spent, how much they've earned on our various sites. So please come and check it out. And we'll be back soon with more content. Until then, cheers and bye-bye.